Some people might call you Play on Tabletop Nick.
I've never heard that.
I call you Town Nick.
Okay, I'll take Town Nick.
That is your name?
Town Nick?
Town Nick,
Nick.
acceptable.
Well,
name.
speaking of iconic, we thought we'd do this shot here by the Rhino.
Because it's iconic.
Right.
Because why not?
But it's not iconic.
Only the finest of
This is my first time here, and
Tabletop
I'm
Tactics.
excited. And I got to be here with some amazing people, and all of you, especially.
Welcome back to Tabletop Tactics with myself, Lawrence, here to talk to you guys about the incredible invitation that myself and Fletcher received to go behind the scenes at Games Workshop headquarters in Nottingham and Warhammer World to review The Age of Darkness. That's right, 30K is back, and it's back in a big way with an incredible new starter set. So Games Workshop kindly offered us to go behind the scenes and play test the game ahead of it actually being launched in the big Horus Heresy open day. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that, and you're going to see some awesome footage of the experience we have behind the scenes, because Games Workshop also let me film, which is really cool, and that's all coming up in a second. So just what does it take to get an invite to Games Workshop's Warhammer World and go behind the scenes for the Heresy event? Well, we didn't just get it for nothing. No. We had a special task that was given to us by Games Workshop HQ, which we executed perfectly. And by we, I mean Fletcher. So he did an incredible job on this Primarch. And we were told by Games Workshop that if we could paint it to a really nice standard and send it ahead of ourselves before we actually got there, they'd be able to do some nice videography and photography for it and display it in all of its glory alongside all of the other content creators' work at the actual Warhammer World Horus Heresy open day. So Fletcher spent about 3 days painting Ferrus, and I'm sure you guys will agree that, I mean, the face is just incredible. It's like he literally like brings the models to life. I love the metallic alloy arms with the slight glow that you've got there, and it's kind of how I envisions Ferrus. And I'm a big fan of Ferrus Manus, and in fact, when I read the first 3 Heresy novels, which I'm sure are kind of like the original trilogy that most people got sucked into the Heresy with. The relationship that Ferrus had with Fulgrim and what happens on Isstvan 4 is so brutally tragic, but you can't help but just love the Iron Hands after reading them. And so it was a real pleasure to be given the Gorgon himself for Fletcher to paint. So Fletcher did this beautiful job. We sent it ahead of ourselves to Games Workshop. And then, of course, the day came where we went actually to Warhammer World a day early before the Horus Heresy event so that we could preview some special stuff behind the scenes. Let's talk about that next. So bright and early on the Friday morning before the day of the event, myself and a bunch of content creators all marched to Warhammer World, ready for a day of behind the scenes goodies. And they kicked it off in very nice fashion by playing a game. So we actually got to experience the Horus Heresy game ahead of time. GW put on a nice intro game for us where I got to roll the dice. We're doing Imperial Fists versus the Sons of Horus, Loyalists versus Traitors, of course. And it was really cool. I thought I'd talk to you guys a little bit about my gaming experience. I've always loved Heresy from afar, although we've never collected it or played it here on the channel. I was pretty familiar with the rules, plenty of friends that played Heresy 30K back in its previous edition, and I was curious about how GW would go in terms of direction with the rules writing. Were they going to like update to like a 9th style rule set, or would they keep it sort of back in 7th and then you know, make it a hybrid? And it turns out my experience so far is that it's still very much rooted in 7th, which kind of makes sense because ultimately we're talking legions on legions, marines on marines, for the most part, right? And the rules really hit me with a big nostalgia vibe. I mean, even opening the box set, you've got the red measuring sticks that, you know, you're not supposed to hit people with or move models with, but some people do. Don't do that at home, you know, but everyone has those nostalgia vibes with those red measuring sticks, which I think first came in like the second edition box set, which is the first box game I played of 40k. And the absolute value you get in the box set, the plastic miniatures, you've got 2 large armies in there. I'm not sure the exact points, but I'm guessing it's around 750 points a side, certainly 500 minimum. And so you're getting quite a lot in there to actually start playing straight away. So when we played the intro game, we were using basically the box set. There was a Spartan tank there, he had a Contemptor, and of course the Legionnaires and some characters. And I immediately was hit with the AP values. You know, there was no modifiers anymore, but they've done some things to really tighten the 7th edition rule set. So the psychic phase is basically removed, and instead those powers are more like abilities. And they've got a really cool reaction system as well. But there are other things like helping to reduce some of the killing value in 7th edition. So for those of you which may have played Heresy previously or just 7th edition 40k, an AP value used to mean that if it was AP 3, no one got an armor save of 3 or more. They were just removed. So there was no modifier, there was no like AP -3, so a person with a 3 up save still got a 6 up. Instead, it just removed the armor save, which could be pretty savage with a lot of low AP weapons in Heresy. However, they've mitigated it a little bit. One of the things which stuck out to me was the plasma, for example. So the plasma actually, it could still get hot, but it would only be AP 2 on the roll to wound of a 4 or more. Otherwise it was AP 4. I think this goes to AP 3, sorry. So Marines would still get a save unless a 4 or more was wounded, was rolled to wound. So it had like a rending ability, which is quite cool. But the biggest thing for me as a 9th edition player, or in fact playing 40k since 2nd edition, is there was a reaction system now. You could actually do something in reaction to what your opponent was doing. You could do 1 per phase, which is really, really cool. So you could effectively fire, shoot at someone that was coming near you. You could move back, you could do an overwatch, you know, these sort of things. And that was really nice because it made me feel like I always had a play, whereas I've always felt 40k was very much, I get a whole turn and then you get a whole turn. So that change in Heresy is actually something which I think would be really interesting to bring into 40k, perhaps in a future edition. So it was really, really enjoyable to play that. And I think actually added a lot of tactical nuance. You know, you can't just rely on setting your army up, moving forward and alpha striking your opponent as you get to fire everything and they just have to sit there making saves. It made me quite excited, in fact, to pick up the game and start playing it myself, to get some of the legions going and create some special one-off battle reports. But for now, we'll have to work with what we have. But you watch this space, because there will be Heresy content in the future. So with the final casting of the dice, our gaming experience was over. The Imperial Fists were victorious that day. The Sons of Horus driven back. Those traitorous dogs. Don't tell anyone, I actually really like them. But the Imperial Fists and Dawn were victorious. And then we were given the pleasure of a special private tour in the Warhammer World exhibition by the curator herself, which was really, really cool. We were also given the special privilege of being allowed to film inside and release some of the footage for you guys here today. So that was a real privilege. Myself and Fletcher really, really enjoyed it. And we got to learn about the history. Now, every time I go to Warhammer World, I always go into the exhibition because they regularly change things out, you know, put a new display on. But I've never had a guided tour before, and that was really cool because they've got a very strong theme, and, you know, the history of Games Workshop, you know, some of the original OG models from the 80s. It's just beautiful, and there's always something new to see, it seems, every time I go. But she was really kind in explaining the process, the design process, how they make the big boards, the displays, the team behind painting the miniatures, you know, how the studio comes in and takes miniatures off for photography and painting in the design studios in White Dwarf. And I thought it was just a really nice experience to have, and we shared that with myself and the rest of the content creators. They took us around in a big group, so that was very, very special indeed. And then we were given the extra special privilege of being allowed a tour in smaller groups this time of the Warhammer TV studios. Myself and Fletcher had a great time, but seeing the masterclass set up and where they filmed their battle reports was really, really lovely. So that wrapped up the first day, the Friday before the day of the event. And the next day was, of course, the actual Horus Heresy open day, which was open to the public. Bright and early the next morning, myself, Fletcher, and the rest of this tour de force marched on Warhammer World to be greeted by a legion of fans of the Heresy, cosplayers, fans of the content creators, of Tabletop Tactics, of all of the people that were coming were there, and we were given a very warm welcome. It was really, really lovely to be there for the Golden Gates to open and reveal the goodies of the Heresy inside. So as we went into the venue, we were given another special privilege of being allowed to film inside Warhammer World itself, which again, you're not normally allowed to do. This was a special grant given to us by Games Workshop so that we could show what the event was like on the day. And it was a really, really buzzing atmosphere. And particularly, lots of people were very interested in all of the miniatures that the content creators had painted. But seeing Varus Manus along with all of the other Primarchs and the legions done from the box set was just glorious. It was a great showcase seeing them up there in Warhammer World in those cabinets with all of the lights. The other cool thing that was happening is lots of demo games, because I'm sure that, like I was, lots of people were curious about whether the 7th edition rule set would be completely different or whether it would be tweaked. And then they also had a huge painting row as well. So of course Fletcher sat down and painted a Heresy Beaking Marine, which he did as a Sons of Horus scheme, which I just think he did it in the heavy metal style, that Games Workshop, you know, clean, crisp style. It's a lovely green too on the Sons of Horus. Really makes you want to collect them. So he did that there. And we got to just hang out with the public. So that was a really, really great thing to be able to do there on the day. With the Horus Heresy day coming to a close and having met lots of you lovely people and chatting, Fletcher and myself decided to call it a day and travel back down to Bath. But massive shout out to Games Workshop for allowing us to come and preview the game and giving us a special tour behind the scenes at GWHQ. And I personally am really looking forward to especially covering some of the narrative and grand battles that you can create with Heresy in future content here on Tabletop Tactics. So if you're a Heresy fan, stay tuned to us because I've definitely got it on my hit list. For now, I've been Lawrence. We've been Tabletop Tactics. Thank you, GW, but more importantly, thank you, bosses. And go out there and enjoy Heresy and the new box game.